Predictive brand engagement, harnessing the emotion that drives your brand. Strategic brand equity engagement. There is little argument these days with David Ogilvy. Marketers everywhere have accepted not only that consumer decision-making is more emotional than rational, but that getting at what's driving those emotions is impossible using direct questioning. Even B2B brands understand that there are emotional connections at work in the decision process. The old saying, "No one ever got fired for buying IBM," is perhaps one of the best examples of the strong emotions underlying business decision-making. This shift for the consumer, from the rational to the emotional, puts psychology front and center when it comes to measuring the real drivers of consumer decision-making. The Brand Keys methodology was built with archetypal psychology as its foundation, building on the work of the father of archetypes, Carl Jung, Freud's most famous student, best known for his work in personifying emotions in order to understand their underlying dynamics. The same theoretical foundation is used worldwide to understand human behavior. At Brand Keys, we apply this personification technique to brands, using it to understand the innate, unconscious processes involved in decision-making, a technique independently validated by the Advertising Research Foundation and numerous published case studies. Those emotional metrics, on their own, would require researcher interpretation. To avoid that subjectivity and make the model completely consumer-centric, the emotional metrics are fused with category-specific items. Those attributes, benefits, and values then give category relevancy and structure to the emotions driving consumer decision-making. Thus, an unconscious emotional driver like safety is illuminated with relevant category meaning for the brand, perhaps translating into items around the idea of trust or guarantees. But the Brand Keys methodology was not built for educational purposes. Answers are only useful if they respond to the questions that keep a brand healthy and strong. All findings are focused on understanding if and how the brand is beneficiary of the exercise, what they can tell the brand about where it should be going, not where it has been, that the output can be easily shared with those who do not have a research background, and always uses the ideal as the ultimate benchmark, that emotional and rational yardstick the consumer uses to measure brands against. For a long time, brands have become accustomed to evaluating performance against an average, which is always built from what happened in the past. While averages can be useful, they are extremely limited and offer no insight about the future. The ideal the consumer holds for a category is what Brand Keys uses to measure brand performance, and everything the brand does, from media strategy to advertising evaluation. The ideal is what the consumer brings to the category and plants the brand firmly in the consumer's view of the world before looking at their brand. This consumer-focused view is critical to understanding where to aim the brand for the greatest payoff. Brand Keys uses a four-dimensional model of the ideal. The first dimension is to understand what the drivers are in the category and their order of importance. But the drivers are not simply named by us. They are named based on their components. Components put there by the way the consumers answered both the emotional and the rational questions. This is the second dimension of the model that gives granularity to the drivers and allows brands to get very specific. Those driver components, the category attributes, benefits, and values seen previously on the right-hand side of the model, are, like the drivers themselves, ordered by percent contribution each item makes to engagement. This information allows the brand to get very specific in its efforts. And the third dimension assigns a value to those drivers that allows the brand to understand exactly how much importance is attributed to each driver and the percent contribution each makes to brand engagement. But knowing what is important in a category is not a complete picture. Often things can be important, but cost of entry to a category, much as safety is in the airline category. In this example of the ideal out-of-home coffee provider, location and value is not where consumer expectations are strongest and where a brand can best differentiate. That must be satisfied first, but it is expected. To understand the critical differentiating aspect of the category, you need a fourth dimension, consumer expectations. The height of the bars tells us that it's the service and surroundings driver where a coffee provider can dig for differentiating gold. Taken together, these four dimensions offer a complete view of the consumer ideal, an ideal that changes for every category a consumer approaches. To see the Brand Keys methodology in action, let's look at a case study of two major brands, Coke and Pepsi. As Forbes reported early in 2012, Pepsi responded forcefully to slipping market share by not only cutting jobs, but by boosting ad spending. But as any brand knows, layoffs and increased GRPs do not success make. Advertising without a consumer-resonant strategy is just more waste. Let's take a look back to 2011 to see what happened that caused this reaction from Pepsi in the beginning of the next year. The 2011 ideal from the Brand Keys Customer Loyalty Engagement Index in the soft drink category demonstrated exactly where Pepsi was winning in this bottleneck game that had been going on for years between these two major brands. Having a brand that is appropriate for the entire family was the only driver where Pepsi had significant dominance over Coke. And as our numerous validation studies show time and time again, the consumer ideal is predictive of market behavior. Pepsi dominated Coke in sales in 2011. But Coke did not sit still. Initiating a major advertising campaign directed toward the family driver where it was lagging, Coke went up against Pepsi once again. In January of 2012, our nationwide syndicated study, the Customer Loyalty Engagement Index, demonstrated that Coke had been successful at directing its efforts right where they needed to be, their customers changing their minds and hearts about Coke's appropriateness for the entire family. And the marketplace realities that precipitated the layoffs and up to advertising spend at Pepsi? A not insignificant loss against its major competitor of nearly $1 billion. This case study demonstrates that targeting brand efforts according to the emotional and rational aspects of the category that form the ideal that consumers bring to the purchase decision is sound business strategy. Let's take a look at another category, one that has become indispensable to consumers, cell phones. Let's take a look at how an engagement-based SWOT analysis can be used to target brand action. The data we are showing here is from the Brand Keys Customer Loyalty Engagement Index, an annual nationwide syndicated study of the ideals that drive categories and how brands measure up. 49,000 consumer interviews drawn from the 9 U.S. Census regions, this year covering 83 categories and nearly 600 brands, surveys males and females 18 to 65 years old about the categories they shop and the brands they use. This distinction regarding category and brand is critical, as brand performances in this study are evaluated by those that know the brand best, its own customers. A view of the cell phone category puts connectivity as the most important driver in engagement and what creates loyalty in the category. It happens to have the highest expectations as well, though that is not always the case, as every category is unique. As you can see, consumers don't buy cell phones using the same criteria they use to buy cola. Here we see that connectivity is significantly more important than anything else, with the highest expectations. That's critical to know, but more needs to be made clear to build the most effective brand strategy. Every driver contains the attribute, benefit, and value items that gives the driver its name, ranked by percent contribution, thus enabling the brand to get very, very specific on how to sequence its efforts according to what will offer the greatest payback. But a view of the category ideal is incomplete without a demonstration of how the brands are performing against that ideal. Very often, consumer expectations outstrip brand performance. Using this example, we see that Samsung, while not meeting that very high ideal for connectivity, is significantly higher than its closest competitor, Sony. But Samsung cannot rest on its success there. A problem looms for Samsung in that second driver, product design. While not as important as connectivity, expectations are very high here too, and it's also important. And, critically, Samsung is weak against LG in this area. This kind of SWOT analysis allows Samsung to address this issue, opening up that product design driver to see exactly what consumers feel is most important and contributing to LG's better performance. The ideal can be turned into an overall weighted average of the 4 category drivers, allowing for an overall brand equity number to be used for strategic dashboards or tracking reports that brands use to respond to brand equity threats. As we continue to work with clients around the world, we find hardworking people doing their absolute best to help brands succeed. But as Deming points out so well, knowing what to do, how to focus the energy of those brand and agency teams is the shortest, quickest, and surest road to success. We specialize in exactly that, in helping brands know what to do as they go forward into the future. We specialize in the brand equity and engagement metrics that make sense of the category drivers. These metrics have been proven to be predictive of in-market performance and to correlate very highly with sales and profitability. We believe the success of this methodology is due to its foundation in psychology, allowing us to get beneath the radar to understand the emotional and rational factors driving the category, using that consumer ideal to measure the impact of any media, marketing, or communications initiative. Our independent validations include a recent financial equity analysis done by 24/7 Wall Street, identifying a near-perfect matchup of the brand keys identified as best meeting consumer expectations with market leadership. Aquatung Capital Advisors, an independent equity valuation firm, examined the correlation between our rankings and brand value, resulting in extremely high correlations across 10 different categories they examined. And the Advertising Research Foundation conducted a first opinion review of BrandKey's methodology, resulting in the coveted seal of approval from this leading industry organization, validating that the method does indeed do what we say it does. We conduct research worldwide and have been doing so since 1984, and we are proud to call some of the world's largest brands our clients. BrandKeys is the only research consultancy in the United States to have all 3 of its principles honored with a Great Mind Award from the Advertising Research Foundation, all for innovation as the methodology has been applied to the most pressing needs of brands today. The methodology is open-sourced in Predicting Market Success, written by BrandKey's founder, Dr. Robert Pasakoff, and case studies have been gathered together in a book co-authored by Dr. Pasakoff and Amy Shea, entitled The Certainty Principle, which focuses on application of the methodology to media challenges. We speak all over the world on brands and effective measurement. And many of our results are published through our syndicated studies. As demonstrated here, the Customer Loyalty Engagement Index, now in its 17th year, ranks hundreds of brands based on their ability to meet consumer ideals. A new addition to this study, the Digital Platform Engagement Index, for the first time connects consumer engagement with digital communication platforms to consumer engagement with categories, allowing brands to locate the crosshairs of digital technology and brand strategy via our digital platform GPS. Our loyalty leaders list and the leaders in Major League sports and retail fashion allow us to deeply understand the major themes and trends across brands and help brands implement them in category. While our syndicated work is well known, our proprietary work is at the core of what we do. From predictive category dynamics, as demonstrated in this presentation, to tracking brand health, evaluating advertising communications and helping brands shape them, to working with brands on media applications, both traditional and the newly digital, we use the ideal in our approach at the center of brand architectures to help guide whatever the brand builds to be most effective in the marketplace. Not only are all these applications predictive, they're adaptable. Brand Key's metrics can be easily combined to optimize current research efforts like tracking, media planning, and web listening. Because what Yogi said is more true today than ever. The future ain't what it used to be. We invite you to check out YouTube for demonstrations of some of our other applications, and to visit our website or contact us for a discussion specialized to your needs. Thank you, and we wish you all success.